Welcome to this week's episode of Moving Forward Talk with Diana. I am your host, Dr. Diana Clark. This platform is open to discuss various topics with the goals to motivate others to shape their future without limitation. And this week with me, I have Mr. Teddy Jones. Mr. Teddy Jones, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Diana. The pleasure is all mine.
And I must say, this is my first episode with a fellow Jamaican who is currently in Jamaica. Technology has really...
I'm honored.
I'm so honored to have you. Technology have really improved.
Oh, yes. Oh, I mean, it has made things that would have been like extremely tedious and costly
Right.
a few short years ago. It has totally obliterated all of that.
Right. So we're going to be having a dialogue, and Mr. Teddy Jones, just a little bit about him. He is a certified life coach who focused on transformational coaching as a master NLP practitioner. He is a public theologian, an author, and an entrepreneur. And Mr. Jones will be sharing with us, because we all know that he didn't arrive with so many titles. He didn't just arrive at any one of those titles just overnight. So he's going to share with us his journey, some of his challenges that he faced while pursuing his professional journey. Mr. Jones, the platform is yours, sir.
All right. Thanks, Diana. And let me express tremendous greetings to all your subscribers, your viewers, your followers, and your family and friends, supporters, and fans. It's really good to be here, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, for the platform to align with something that is quite in keeping with what I'm typically about. And let me congratulate you, Diana, on what you're doing, and just commend you, wishing that you will just continue to move from one level of greatness and excellence to the next. And you're quite right. Sometimes it's easy for persons to see you where you are currently, and kind of have this bubble effect. But for so much of us in life, I mean, any one of us, wherever we are today in the present moment, it's like the iceberg phenomenon. The tip of the iceberg is visible, but sometimes what lies beneath the surface can extend very deep and very broad and wide beneath the surface. And our life's journey is like that. I was sharing with someone just this past week a very pivotal moment that I recall in my journey. Growing up in a rural community, growing up being raised by my mom and my stepfather. They were pretty much subsistence farmers, and my stepfather was in the construction industry, so very, very humble beginnings. And I definitively recall early in their marriage when they had very, very little means, and the house was very simple. But you know what? In spite of that, they made sure that we never lacked the basics, and they created a family environment where we learned to be appreciative. We learned to be content, and that allowed us to, from that time, even to this very day. My stepfather is now deceased since 2012. My mom is still alive, and my siblings and I, we have a deep, deep appreciation for their sacrifice and the simplicity of life. So we learned from very early to appreciate the finer things in life, to appreciate family, to appreciate generosity, because that's how we saw them live their life. We learned to to just give and give and give and give, and find tremendous joy in doing that, even out of the little that we had. So I was sharing with somebody this past week, a day in my primary school journey where I was being presented with a national prize, a plaque, and some other token. I don't remember what it was, but what I remember is what is more significant. A couple of my schoolmates and I, we represented our primary school in the national agriculture science quiz. And we did very well. We got to the finals. I remember the finals were held in the studio of the main radio station. And it was my first time being in studio of a radio station. And we placed first in that quiz, National Primary Schools quiz. And so the day came for the prize giving. So the Minister of Education came to our school. And of course, that was a big thing. You know, the Minister of Education is coming to our school in that rural area. But guess what? That morning, the day before, my shoes gave way. And it was in the middle of the term. And typically you get a new pair of shoes in September at the start of the term. And that pair of shoe, it's expected to carry you all the way to December for the Christmas break and possibly over into January. You know, it's to keep you as long as you can go. I remember telling my mom, you know, Mom, my shoes got busted. And she said, well, son, I'm not able to get you a new pair right now. So just hold on until Mommy is able to get you a new pair. And so that next day, guess who went to school, walked to school, couple miles, barefooted, and totally unknown to me, the Minister of Education is coming to, I found out when I got to school that was the day the Minister of Education is coming to do the prize giving. So here am I on the stage at my school, collecting my prize, barefooted and all, from the Minister of Education. And the media is there, and they were snapping away. But it didn't matter. It was only afterwards I was reflecting, I was thinking that there are many other students who would probably have said, no way, I am not going on stage to collect a prize like this with the media and all of that in my bare feet. That didn't matter. What mattered most was the joy, the excitement of us having done so well, and that the Minister of Education, you know, I'm actually going to be shaking the hand of the Minister of Education. And I didn't know that my mom kept that picture all those years until I visited her when I was in the middle of my undergrad studies. So all of this is in Grenada, actually, where I grew up, primary school, high school, and then I came to Jamaica for college studies. So I visited her midway in the undergrad degree, and she showed me the picture. And I wanted to take the picture from her, but she wouldn't let me. She said, no, you're not getting this picture. And she had it. But I always look back on it. Unfortunately, in 2004, when Hurricane Ivan passed through the Caribbean, the house, part of the roof was damaged, and so that picture and others got lost. But I was reflecting on that this week because I was sharing with the person that a lot of times we forget our journey and the little things along the way that were actually big things. And I was saying to the person that when you are at that age and stage, those are the things that help you to gain the right perspective for later in life. So now, whatever abundance, whatever material gain, whatever greater success and platforms I am blessed to experience, they will never change the simplicity with which I approach life, the generosity, the kindness, because so many people allow these indicators of success to totally transform them into harsh and unkind and uncaring and selfish individuals.
Right.
You know, yeah. So the journey was one of not having much materially, but having a very solid and deep spiritual and philosophical foundation that has set the stage for my philanthropic efforts to date, the ease with which I connect with the so-called underprivileged and those who are on the fringes of society. Those are the persons that I love connecting with them. I love hearing their stories. And again, it is because I've been there. Maybe
Right.
the circumstances may not be entirely the same, but I know what it is to struggle. I know what it is to have lack. I understand the tremendous sacrifices that parents make to give their children the best that they can educationally. And so when I see children and youngsters wasting their time in school, it breaks my heart because I know the tremendous sacrifices that their parents are making. And I consider it that one of the best ways to repay, I mean, you can't ever repay your parents, right? But one of the best ways to say thanks then is to make the most of every opportunity. Because I believe that in life, there are no coincidences.
Right.
I picked up a phrase from a colleague of mine a couple of years ago. She refers instead to God incidences, not coincidences.
Right.
Because as I look back now, I see the rich tapestry that my life is now and how every one of those experiences was part of a master plan to weave a tapestry to put on display for the world. And I refer to all of that as the unfolding of purpose. Because at the end of the day, Diana, we all are placed on earth with
For a
a
purpose.
divine purpose. And one of the most unfortunate things is a person who never understands this, never pursues purpose, or does it dispassionately, rather than with all the fervor and the zest and the energy and the passion that they can. So that, as I like to talk to persons about in my coaching, so that all of us can be all that we can
Can be.
and should be.
Right.
That's the pursuit. That's what the pursuit of purpose is all about. Ensuring that we all be all that we can and should be.
Right. And very important. And that's why we have to identify our purpose, because if we don't know what our purposes are, there's no way that we can pursue that purpose.
Absolutely.
So what is your role in helping others identifying their purpose?
Right. So my role then is as a coach, as a facilitator, to help the person to look at what their journey has been like, their experiences, the sum total of their experiences, the sum total of their heart, what it is that moves them. You know, some people will hear on the news about human trafficking, for example, and they just get fired up. And every time they hear that, so your heart is sending you some signals. What are your abilities? All of us have been tremendously blessed by God with abilities. And again, unfortunately, some persons will go through life and never discover what their abilities are, or they discover them very late in life, you know, and we are all abled in different ways. And I totally reject the notion that we must only ascribe intelligence to those who are able to to perform very well on very narrow indices of measurement, right? And in 2009, while I was studying in South Africa, one of our professors, he put it in a way that I totally loved and I've been using ever since. This is what he said. He said, in education, we have been asking the wrong question. Educators have been asking children the wrong question for too long. He said, we have been asking children, how intelligent are you? Rather, he says, we should be asking, how are you intelligent? Because the latter makes a pre-assumption that we all are intelligent, and we all are in different ways. And so the task of education, the task is to help so that they can hone those intelligences, all part of our abilities, so that they can then function and excel in those intelligences, right? And then our personalities, our experiences, our abilities, our heart, helping persons to put all of that together and look at what are the realities in the world, what's happening in our world, with all the brokenness, with all the pain points, what connects. And for those who subscribe to a biblical worldview, a Christocentric worldview, what is God saying in all of this? What breaks the heart of God? So you put all of that together and help persons to zero in on that place when you have the overlap of all of these, that place that speaks specifically to them. And the difference is amazing. The opening of the eyes, the eyes lighting up, is that eureka moment when a person finally realizes, yeah, this is my purpose, and this is what I was born for, so that they can then really be fired up. You see the thing, when you lock into your purpose, adversities, challenges, obstacles, all of those become not only bearable, but they become mere launch pads for greater, right, for you doing and becoming greater. So I talk about making that vertical leap in coaching, making that vertical leap from mediocrity to legacy. Because one of the things that we find quite prevalent is the limiting beliefs that hold us back, the self-limiting beliefs that so many of us struggle with, and it causes us to dwell in the netherland of mediocrity. And that was me, you know. So I spoke about my stepfather earlier, and that is because my mom and my dad, you know, things didn't go well with them. So she got married to my stepfather. And in my journey, there came a point where I realized that as great as my stepfather was, he was an awesome gentleman. He deposited some real nuggets for life in me, and he really supported my mom in raising me in every way and so on. But guess what? There is a space and a place that our fathers, our biological fathers, are meant to play that can never be replaced by anyone else. So there was still this yearning in me. Something was still missing. And the way that translated in my life was a little bit different. So I was a student from primary school years, high school, all the way through college. But guess what? self-limiting beliefs because of the absence of my father in that kind of way, and how I was experiencing that vacuum. I had some serious self-limiting beliefs. So others were always speaking greatness over my life, but I could not see it. And it was only years later, working with my mentor and mentor slash counselor, that he helped me to understand what was missing. It was that yearning for the love, the acceptance, the affirmation of my father that caused me to develop these serious self-limiting beliefs. So people were speaking greatness over me, but I could not see it. I could not accept it. So even though I was doing extremely well academically, guess what? I was still functioning at the level of mediocrity because in me, I was not accepting the greatness that was possible. So though I was getting A's, I was still operating at a mediocre level because there was so much greater that I was capable of, but I would never have gotten there unless I dispensed with those self-limiting beliefs. When my mentor helped me to see that and helped me to understand that I need not remain there anymore because I can't go back and undo the past. I can only move forward with a platform of understanding that my level of self-worth, my self-acceptance, my self-love can be grounded in a non-transient source by understanding that God's love for me is greater than any love and acceptance that I might have missed along the way. The moment I got that insight that God loves me with an everlasting love, and it is that same God that gave me that purpose, everything, it was like an explosion. Where I was just getting by, doing well, but just getting by, no great dream, no great vision for myself beyond, get a degree and get a job. But now I was able to see myself beyond that because I was now seeing myself at a place where I was being prepared to be launched into global spaces and to be launched to have impact and influence greatly beyond my years even, and greatly beyond my wildest expectations. What changed? The locus of my understanding of my worth. It shifted from myself and it shifted from my biological father to an understanding of the dimensions of God's love. And that was like a dynamite exploding. And from there, it has only been one height of greatness, one height of excellence to another. So when I talk to persons about moving from mediocrity, helping you to move from mediocrity to legacy, that's what I'm talking about. Persons who are stuck by their own self-limiting beliefs, CEOs who feel that they have been thrust into projects and levels of management that they are not prepared for, that they can't manage. Now, why would those above you have given it to you if they didn't think you can manage? So the person who doesn't think you can manage, it's you. That's your self-limiting beliefs. And so that's how I help persons with an understanding of purpose and an understanding of what the self-limiting beliefs are, how to replace those so that all the glass ceilings, all the barriers that you may have erected or even others may have erected around you, that you can smash all those barriers and move to a place where you are establishing a legacy performance, one that will outlive you long after you've gone. The kinds of lives of impact that the people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the people like Nelson Mandela, people like Mahatma Gandhi. Those were legacy existence. And I believe that each of us has the capacity to be and to do that.
How do we materialize that capacity?
We materialize that capacity by, first of all, understanding ourselves.
Right.
And so many of us don't understand ourselves simply because we do not position ourselves to be able to see. We are so busy doing, and we are in a flurry of activity and a flurry of noise. So in the book that I just completed, I Love Me, 30 Days to Greater Self-Love, on day 1, I focus on awareness.
Right.
That we must be very deliberate, very intentional about becoming more aware about ourselves. Which is why, Diana, so many job candidates, those who were not otherwise prepared, totally flounder and are totally flabbergasted and floored when the interviewer asks the question like, tell me about yourself, or what are your strengths, or what makes you tick? A simple enough question, but why does it floor so many persons? Because the average person simply does not take time to become aware of themselves. So I talk about creating distance from ourselves so that we can see ourselves. And we have to find ways to center down and still the noises around us. So one I think a guy by the name of Heine Arnold says, noise is not of the devil, it is the devil. In that, it keeps us away from discovering ourselves. And so I talk about the fact that in another of the chapters, the fact that the average person, for example, is so unconsciously afraid of being in silence, just total silence by themselves. So we always have to plug something in. We always have to have the music going. We always have to have the TV going because we don't want to be in the silence. It scares us. But it is only as we become intentional that we discover things about ourselves. And sometimes a simple task of just 15 minutes of centering down, no noise, maybe a walk by the riverside, a walk up in the hills, or even right in our very homes, just carving out a space where you just ask the children and everybody else to just give you 15 minutes, and you're just in there, and you sit, and you maybe review your day, or review your week, or review a current challenge, and boom, solutions that had been eluding you all along. They come because you have centered down. So in the book, I included a whole section on the disciplines of silence and solitude. And I recommend that we build those into our lives. So starting with the awareness, that awareness will help us to discover what our self-limiting beliefs are. Some of them are very deep-seated and deeply rooted, and they typically go back to our childhood. That's why revisiting the journey is so important. And again, some of us don't want to do that because there are traumatic experiences in that journey, that stage of childhood, that right. Just to get along, just to get by, our brain has forced into the subconscious. We may not even remember them, but we know that if we take the time to go back, it's going to keep flooding. And we have a false sense of being okay because we are very adaptable. That's how we are as human beings. So our brain has found a way for us to do enough to get along. But again, not having dealt with that pain can be a significant hindrance So again, we're doing enough, and we may even be receiving applause and standing ovations, but we are capable of so much more. And if we get back there and deal with that pain once and for all, we will find that is like a springboard into levels of performance and greatness that we would have never experienced had we not gone back. So the awareness is very important. And when we become aware, the willingness to seek help where necessary. I really believe that my life would have taken a very different trajectory had I not had that breakthrough with my mentor and counselor that day. Because when I see how different my life is now in a positive way, I can only assume that my life would have taken a very flat line trajectory or a very downward trajectory if that had not happened. And since then, there have been many other times where I have deliberately gone and sought the help of coaches and counselors and other mentors to help me to work through some of the other issues that would have arisen. In NLP, we talk about the concept of neuroplasticity. That is the ability that our brain has, even at a physiological level, that our brains are designed for us to change. So we can change. Mm-hmm. I reject the notion that a person can't change for the better. But many times we will need the help of others. And there's nothing wrong, there's nothing to be embarrassed about in seeking the help of others. I mean, the greatest athletes will tell you that they place a tremendous amount of value on the coach that they had who brought them from raw talent or just where they were to new dimension. Usain Bolt forever sings the praises of his coach, Glenn Mills, a master running coach. So we need to find those persons. It might be as simple as reading a book by someone who has gone through a particular track on their journey to gain some insights. It might be as listening to a podcast, you know. So we need the help of others because we were made for community, and we are at our best when we are, the more connected we are to community. I like how the Africans put it, the concept of Ubuntu. I am because you are.
Right.
And the more we connect with the others on our journey, and I find that God has a remarkable way of connecting us with just the right people once we take action. Because motion leads to emotion. You may not feel it, but as you take action, the emotions begin to align. And it takes the introduction of an outside and of energy to get a body that is at rest in motion. But once you get into motion, less energy is required to keep you in momentum. So, I mean, I know how difficult it is to make that first step. First step.
Even thinking about sending you that email that I sent to you, I thought about it probably like 2 or 3 days prior to sending the email. I actually wrote the email a couple of times and deleted it. I'm like, oh no. And then I finally said to myself, when I read your postings on LinkedIn, I said, we are kind of intertwined in what we are trying to do. Step out the box, get out the comfort zone, send the email. It's only 2 options, 2 answers, yes or no.
There you go.
Yes.
Great example right there. Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was working on my first published book, I did a series on radio with the messages in 2014. And then right at the end, I had this insight that, you know, I need to translate this series into a book. That was 2014. 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. And in about September of 2018, two different persons, they had no idea what they were doing. They didn't know I had started working on the book. But two different persons said something to me that essentially was like, you need to finish some things. You're good at starting, but you need to finish. And so it takes energy to start, but sometimes having started, we stop before we complete, you know? So when I heard that, something about it, I said, no. And I told myself, I am not going to allow 2018 to finish and I don't publish this book. Now, it meant that I had to work double time.
Right.
And I had to take, put on blinders, which meant that another very important thing, when you understand your purpose and you're passionate about that, it helps you to prioritize your time and your energies. And one of the most important words in that quest is a very simple word, 2 letters, N-O. Being able to say no to good things, relevant things, important things even, but you have to say no because they are going to cause you to lose momentum, lose focus, and lose track of what it is that you are doing in that moment as part of fulfilling your purpose. So I had to do that. And so on December 18 of 2018, we had the launch. And I remember saying it at the launch that this would not have been possible today if I had not heard from those two persons, right, that thing. And again, it goes back to the importance of having people around you, building into your life, the people that can speak into your life. I call them now the people who sit at your table of influence. Some of us have the wrong people sitting at our table of influence. They are in a very influential position in our life.
Right.
We value them, we value what they say, we value their input, but that input has no concept of who you are and of your purpose. Or even if it does, it has no appreciation for your purpose and your reason for existence. And so we need to ensure that we have the right people around our table of influence. So I talk about in the book, in one of the, on one of the days, the activity for those 30 days is to declutter your social space and make the hard decision where it may be a hard decision to literally remove some people from your table of influence. Life is just too short, Diana, for us to keep people in that space who are not aligned with our purpose, who do not value us as an individual, people who are dragging us down and causing us to second guess ourselves. So that was very important that I had persons like that around me on my journey. And every now and then I do a kind of a forensic audit to make sure that no one who is currently there has outlived their necessity for being there, which happens too. People come into our lives for different seasons sometimes. Right. They fulfill that purpose and they move on. No love lost. And that creates an opportunity for someone else to come in to help you in this new season of greatness. Because remember, we're talking about moving from one level of excellence to the next,
Right.
so that we live a life that is a life of legacy.
You mentioned earlier that we start something, but we quit. And I wanted you to elaborate a little bit more, because we have that energy. We are so excited to start this project.
Yes.
But the minute we see a little bit of challenge, we get stuck or we stop. Sometimes we even move backwards. It's like, and I'm sitting here visualizing a tall hill, especially in Jamaica. You're trying to get to the top of the hill. So we know the higher you climb, the more challenging it is to get to the top. What causes us to give up so early?
I think looking at the whole picture, I think it's part of our humanity to quit. Part of what I believe was damaged when we lost that place that God had placed us in as human beings, our foreparents, Adam and Eve, when they moved away, when they allowed the immediate to transcend the ultimate in their lives. That part of what has resulted is this propensity to quit, to drop the ball, to give up. And it is something that we have to constantly be aware of and constantly be fighting so that we keep going. And again, I hinted at it earlier on, that when you understand your purpose and you are committed to that, it gives you wings, it gives you an energy to keep going, a tenacity, a stick-to-itiveness. Right? So I remember while I was in seminary, preparing myself for what I sensed was that purpose that God had for my life. And I got to a point at the end of the third year, I had 1 year to go, and I had racked up a debt that was more than half of the annual tuition. So I'm entering fourth year and I have that balance and zero towards final year. And I thought to myself, okay, I think I have exhausted all avenues. And well, it was good while it lasted. At least I got 3 years of training. You know, those thoughts, because you see, when you are in the challenge, and the more you focus on it, I find it's like your mind creates every second a new reason why it is okay to quit. We begin to justify it. So it's part of us. And then too, we tend to see the people around us who have quit easier than we see those who did not quit, or somehow their voice seems to be louder. Right. You know, so persons would say, just this week I said to somebody as well, the person was remarking about how many whether she should bother to get married, you know, because she sees so many of her friends and family that their marriage has failed. I said, yeah, that's true. But what about those around you whose marriage has not failed?
Right.
Are there any of those? And she said, yeah. And then she started going like, oh, yeah, that one and that one and that one. And like, there you go. So there are both realities. We see people who have failed, but if we stop, we will also identify that there are many around us who have not failed and who are cheering us along. In the letter to the Hebrews, the writer said, look, since you are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, so great a cloud of witnesses, continue to run the race and don't give up. So I prefer to think on those who have gone and those who passed through, and which is why you see what you are doing, Diana, is so important, because the stories of those who have gone through and have overcome, those stories need to be told, and those stories need to be told widely and loudly, because the voices of those who have failed are loud and they are clamoring.
Right.
So we need the stories of victory, so that people can identify. So that's why I love sharing my story with high school students especially. I said, look, this is where I started. The boy who was on the stage with his bare feet. Yeah. The boy who
And I'm not laughing at you. I'm just laughing with you, because I'm having memory of my own journey,
right,
in the barefoot going to school. So you say that and I laugh. So I just want to make sure I'm not laughing at you. I'm going down memory lane.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. The little boy who used to have to get up before daylight, sometimes when it is still dark, when in the latter months of the year, going out with a sheep and some goats, and then having to come back from school to go and retrieve them, and so on. I don't consider those things now as hardships. I consider that I was tremendously privileged, because you know what? They taught me from an early age how to be responsible and to be brave and to be courageous. So the temptation to give up will always be there, and it will always be strong. But I like to tell people, look, that's one reality, but there's another reality.
Mm-hmm.
Picture yourself, go back to when you started. Why did you start? And then go forward. What's at the end of this journey? What opportunities? The people that you stand to bless, the people who are counting on you. What of those who are rooting for you? That's another reality. Which one will you allow to be the winner? Are you going to allow the reality that, look, this is rough and you don't have it and you're tired and you feel like your feet can't go anymore? And you mentioned climbing hills. I remember the first time I went to a hike to the Blue Mountain Peak.
Mm-hmm.
About half an hour into the journey, Diana, I pulled a groin muscle in my right leg. And we're half an hour into the journey. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I've been looking forward to getting to the peak of the Blue Mountain for so long, and this is now happening and I'm not gonna make it. But that's what I did. I pictured myself up there on that peak in my mind's eye. You see, if you can't see the victory in your mind, if all you can see in your mind is the defeat, then trust me, you are going to be defeated.
Right.
So I pictured that victory. And I said, all right, every step, painful as it is, brings me closer as long as I don't stop. But as we got closer to the peak, when the peak itself, the trees at the top at the peak became visible, and then the route became more and more circular, it seemed. And I thought, man, when is this going to end? But the vision of myself at the end kept me going. And I got there. I did it. So it has a lot to do with our mental posture, mm-hmm. our mental fortitude, and being able to allow that picture of what you are seeking to do and knowing your why. Why are you doing this? Why did you set out in the first place? That allows you, it gives you, I don't quite know how it works. I'm sure the neurologists would have some proper explanation as to how it works, but there's something about having that clear mental picture.
Right.
That is valuable enough. It has to be valuable enough. Yeah. I've heard Usain Bolt, for example, talk about the many times when, after going through the routines of training, he pukes because the muscles in his stomach, they are rebelling because he's pushing himself. And one of the things I've found, Dan, is that the human being has an enormous capacity to go beyond the first indicator of tiredness or weakness. Right. Tremendous capacity to go beyond that. It's almost like I think of it like a switch. So the lactic acid starts building up, the muscles are getting tired. So the body says, all right, no more, don't go any further. But that switch is positioned way low. And then you don't listen to your mind, you don't listen to your body, you go further. And then there's another switch, another point at which you said, all right, no more. And it becomes more desperate every time you push. That's it. You know,
but you have to keep pushing.
All right, you have to keep pushing.
Keep pushing.
And as you push, you realize that there is more that you can do. I think the way in which we are raised and the way in which we are largely cultured is like that body switch at first default. So we need more things, more reminders that, look, you have not even gotten anywhere near to what you are capable of. And that's why I push against mediocrity. It gets me upset. I see it in companies, I see it in organizations. I get upset because I see the greater, so much greater, and I see people squandering what is possible by settling for mediocrity. You know, because there is just so much more that God has made us to be. I mean, think about it. Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, he tried over 1,000 times. It was in him. Something in him said, I want to fix this problem. We need a more convenient way to be able to see when it is dark. So he kept on going. And he had many blunders along the way. But there was something inside of him that saw the picture of a lit room, a lit environment, just at the flick of a switch. But there would have been many triggers in the mind along the way that said, I'll give up. What if Orville and Wilbur Wright, the brothers, what if they had given up? Would maybe somebody else might have gotten it, an airborne machine. Somebody else might have gotten it. But as we look back at the advances, a couple of days ago, the International Space Station was passing through and would have been visible in our hemisphere. I mean, think about the great advances. All of this is evidence of the tremendous capacity that every time mankind has thought that it has reached the limits of science and the limits of exploration, somebody else who refused to accept that kept pushing and proved the majority of everybody else wrong, that there is more.
I think one of the concepts that we have that we shouldn't have is we are not thinking, and we don't work upon, if you try it doesn't succeed, then you try again.
Yes.
We know what we want, and yes, we'll work toward it. But the moment we fail, we lack the understanding that failure is a part of that success. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So once we fail, it's not saying stop.
Right.
It's saying reevaluate what we are doing. See where improvement is needed and make that improvement.
Absolutely.
But we want this, and I'm guilty of it too. We want this, okay, so I will start today, and by the end of this week, I should have it all together, and it don't work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's that desire for perfection, or the perfectionist mentality, it's a double-edged sword, because we need to hold ourselves to high standards,
Right.
and to ascribe towards perfection, but perhaps a better way of thinking of it is that we don't strive for perfection, we strive for excellence. Because sometimes we trap ourselves into inactivity, or we trap ourselves into quitting, because we are the ones, not so much the outside influence now. That's why what self-limiting beliefs, that's another one, the perfectionist agenda. We are the ones who tell ourselves that unless I get it this way, I'm not going to do it. Rather than celebrating the small victories, sometimes pausing, and I go back to creating the distance from yourself. Sometimes all you need to do is just pause, and take that out of your mind totally, relax, meditate, go for a walk, or work on another aspect of it. And it's sometimes like a flash.
You know what? I use the word rejuvenate and come back. And it's so much like
Yes.
taking a test. It's like taking a test. You will never, ever complete that test if you're stuck at number 2 and you stay there, stuck there trying to figure out number 2. Reality, we don't do that.
Right.
But we move on.
Yes.
And come back.
Yes.
Right. And it's exactly the same, just taking a break. Sometimes we just need to rejuvenate that mind.
Yeah.
And come back to it. Now, let's talk about another thing I wanted to say, and I would always say this. A lot of us, we don't want to work. We want the success, but we don't want to work. And I would always refer to Pastor Robert Young. I was listening to him. He was giving a speech to our high school graduate.
Yeah.
And he reminded us that the only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're not the dictionary.
Yes.
So we have to work in order to gain that success that we desire. Let's talk about your newsletter, Delayed But Not Denied.
Yeah.
Because when I tell you we suffer from the lack of patience, we suffer from the lack of patience.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yes.
We want it now.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I always like to go back to how things began. So I go back to Adam and Eve again. Part of why they were beguiled is this very thing. What the enemy did, what the tempter did, was to plant seeds of doubt in their minds that caused them to question whether they were already getting whether they were currently having the best that was available. And unfortunately, in their case, they already had the best. So the question was put to them, the suggestion was made that if you do this, you would become like God. And the suggestion was made that God is holding out on you. God doesn't want you to be like him. But nothing could have been further from the truth, because they were already like him. They were already made in his image and likeness. And he had already given them all that they needed to be their best selves. So there's this desire in us. There's this impatience in us. I want this and I want it now. And why do I want it now? Because I believe that having this is going to be for my betterment. So I want it now, and I'm going to do whatever I need to get it now. So I was reflecting on this struggle for justice and the great disparity in the dispensation of justice. Just around the time when the unfortunate demise of George Floyd and a couple others before him, and others since then. And so over the years, in working with a lot of persons in communities that are underserved, there's a deep sense of injustice and that I will never get justice. There's no point to it. And so there's a saying, it's a very, very ancient saying, justice denied, justice delayed, rather,
Right.
is justice denied.
Mhm.
So I've started to question it. Is that really true where God is concerned? And then I went back to one of the chapters from my first book, Let's Major in the Minors, where in the earlier chapters, I focused on the prophet Obadiah in the Old Testament. And one of the issues that arises there is that the length of time that the nation of Edom had dealt in an unjust manner with the nation of Israel. But ultimately, God, who is the God of justice, ultimately, he intervened. And
Excuse
I
me.
looked at a couple other examples from the scriptures. And so I wanted to challenge this notion that,
Okay, we can go ahead.
right, yeah, that the length of time that seems to pass does not mean that justice is denied. So I was challenging that notion and exploring some of the ways in which we can actually be actively engaged in the process so that justice actually comes, perhaps for want of a better term, more speedily for
Right.
those who have been denied of justice. So part of it is that our inaction, for example, when we can do something and we choose not to, we remain dispassionate, we remain aloof. Um, Part of it is that there are systemic and there is systemic and structural injustice that we can do something about. And again, it is that sense of the power of the individual.
Right.
Dr. Martin Luther King, he became singularly possessed by this notion that his voice and his actions can make a difference. I find that far too many of us today prefer to take the route of a bystander. And then we are the same ones who complain that, we are not getting justice.
But you say we can do something, but we don't do anything. And the reason for that is because we are already mentally defeated.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
That's right. We're defeated by our fear.
Mm-hmm.
We are defeated by our own self-limiting beliefs that, well, it's just me. Oh, it's just little me. What can I do? But look at the many examples coming down throughout history of individuals who made such a difference. Because part of the thing is that when one begins to stand out, it begins to build a momentum. It generates a critical mass.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the thing that we are agitating for, we ourselves may not get to experience it in our lifetime. But again, we're talking about legacy.
Right.
You set the stage. You set in motion. You set the course of action on fire. And others become the torch bearers and become the ones who see that great day of deliverance. Yeah. So I worked on that, and I posted it on my podcast, and then thereafter I said, let me develop it a little further, turned it into an ebook, and make that available free of cost upon request through the newsletter subscription on my website.
I am definitely going to have to go back and try to download my free copy.
Yes.
Well,
If you have any challenges getting it that from there, just let me know and I'll send it directly to your email.
Okay. Now, before we wrap up, I would love for you to give our young people, our young viewers, and my passion is with our younger generation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's
but
me too.
Right. I do understand that even the older generation can benefit.
Yes.
So I would tend to say, give my younger generation some words of encouragement on how to move beyond past hurt, pains, the struggles, and find a way to just keep pushing.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for the opportunity. So again, shifting perspective.
Right.
One of the phrases that has become quite kind of an anthem among the millennials is the struggle is real. And absolutely, it is real. The struggle is very real. Your struggles, your issues, they are very real. Some of them are totally different from my struggles. And some of them I may not be able to relate. So the struggle is real. But again, perspective. The struggle is real. Yes, absolutely. But so too is the path of victory.
Right.
God did not put you on earth to struggle and to experience defeat. Yeah. So the struggle is real. Like we were saying, the voices encouraging you to give up, they are loud, but there are other voices. There are other realities that victory is possible, that you can make it. One of the things that I find that when you are facing a difficulty, one of the things that the enemy likes to do is to convince us that we are singular in that struggle. Mm-hmm. Make you feel like you are the only one going through this. That is not true. And that itself will cause you to want to sink further into despondency. Reach out and get help. There are a number of persons who are eager to help young people by being a mentor, by being a coach, by being a networker, by being a sponsor, by being a listening voice. Never buy into this notion that you are totally alone and that no one will understand. That is absolutely not true. It cannot be. You would be amazed at how many persons out there, how many others can relate to what you are going through, because they may not say it, but that is like you're telling their own story.
Right.
So reach out. Yeah, that's the first step. And understand that you were born for greatness. Don't settle for being a destroyer. Strive towards being a leader. There is some problem that the world is currently facing that you were born, that you were uniquely qualified to solve. Yeah, Sir Winston Churchill, in his great speech to motivate the Allied troops, when he spoke to them about your finest moment, said that there is this thing that all of us were born for, this one thing, and when we identify it, when we find it, he says, in that moment we find greatness, and it is our finest hour. So never settle for this a notion of just here. You are not just here. There is significant purpose and significance and greatness wrapped up in your existence. And the world is waiting for the unveiling. There are more opportunities to help you to become that person if you reach out and if you genuinely want to be helped. You don't have to settle for the burden. You don't have to settle for the pain. I mean, great pain, trauma, yes, it happened. The obstacles are there, but so too are the resources that God has made available for you to become what he wanted you, what he wants you to be, if you will only reach out and embrace this calling and purpose that is upon your life. The love that God has for you is an everlasting love, and when you understand the dimensions of that love, that it is high and it is wide and it is deep. So there's nothing, there's no shame that is beyond God's love. That is, it is wide enough to wrap itself around however you think you need to run and however unworthy you feel that you are. That was my foundation. That's what broke the cycle for me. And I know that it will help anyone else who embraces it. So I share that with you to give you a tremendous sense of hope, the love of God, that God loves you with an everlasting love. And once you start there with that foundation, everything else will begin to fall into place, because he orders the events of your life towards one purpose, towards one thing, one reality. You fulfilling the purpose that he made you to fulfill and placed you upon earth to do.
Thank you so very much. And I just would like to let you know that your time, your contribution to this podcast, your words of encouragement is greatly appreciated. And I know that it will reach and change someone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just wanted to add before I get off, you said they do believe sometimes that they're the only one going through some stuff. Yeah. And I happened to speak to someone who said, you'll never understand. And I said, tell me, I bet I will. Nobody went through what I'm going through. And I said, okay, let's just say nobody else went through. You're the first person. Yes. Now, take a step, do something about it so you can be that trendsetter.
Yes.
And how to overcome what only you know, because somebody else is going to experience that later. So it was a pleasure to have you. And until next time, this has been Moving Forward Talk with Diana.